Well, that was quite the year, wasn't it? Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm finally going to do my 2022 wrap up. I know we are like 3/4 of the way through January, but as you'll see when you see my January wrap up, January has been quite the month already, and I'm only just getting a chance to sit down and film this video. So I'm hoping it's not too late. I don't think it is. I feel like I saw a tweet saying that like 2023 is going to start in February this year because like January is like the soft open, and that's the vibe that I'm going with. So I'm hoping that you are still interested to hear some stats and stuff about 2022. As you can see from the state of my bookshelves behind me, I have pulled out my favourite books of the year, or at least the ones that I've got. And I thought we'd just talk it through. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. Just the two usual like caveats. I have got all 3 cats currently prowling around, so if you can hear background noise, I do apologise. And also talking background noise, my next door neighbours are currently having some kind of karaoke party, even though it's 9:30 in the morning. Each their own, so I'm sorry if you can hear that as well. And also secondly, as always, I am currently poorly. I've got yet another chest infection, so I apologise in advance if I am coughing and spluttering. And here comes Jack. And there goes Jack. So what I want to do is we're just going to talk through my stats for the year. We're going to talk about my favourite books of the year, and just kind of generally wrap things up. So 2022 is a bit of a blur, even it's only January of 2023 and I'm already like, don't really know what happened. In terms of personal stuff, I completed my first academic year as a teacher and started my second academic year as a teacher. Charlie turned 13. It's just been another year of, you know, life, family, holidays, birthdays, Christmas. We got the 2 cats, the girl cats. So we started off 2022 in January, 2nd of January, adopted Molly to add to Jack. And then on my birthday in August, end of August, we adopted Savannah, and now we have got 3 black cats wandering around our house. So yeah, our family has grown, and overall there's been some hard stuff that happened in the year, and I will link my wrap up playlist if you want to see everything that happened to me this year or last year. But overall we are healthy, happy and together, so we've been pretty lucky, I think. So in terms of reading, we'll start with some stats and then I'll do favourites. And we'll finish on that because that'll be a positive note. So I read 157 books in 2022, which is a lot. It's also the lowest amount that I've read in a year for a while. My personal best is 197, but that was told you I was going to cough. That was during 2020, during the initial stages of the pandemic, when there was literally nothing else to do but stay at home and read. So I think 157 books, given how busy my life is. I tend to work sort of 60-hour work weeks, so I think 157 is really good. I set my initial Goodreads goal at 100 and then I bumped it up to 150 in about August time, so I still exceeded that and I'm very happy with that, so that was good. Pages read was 53,650. That's a lot of pages. And my average star rating was a 4.10. So not only did I read a lot in terms of volume, the quality was also really, really good. And obviously from that you can tell my average star rating was a 4. We'll talk about star ratings in a minute. So I read a lot of books, and I also read a lot of books that I really enjoyed. My best months in terms of number of books, I was really surprised because, like I've said, I'm a teacher, so I don't work in August, and I thought August would be my best reading month in terms of volume, and randomly October and December were tied with 19 books each, and I'm still not quite sure why. And obviously those months also have holidays in. October has half term and December has Christmas. But I'm off in for the whole of August. So I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens this year with that. But yeah, number of books, it was October and December. And then for star rating, my best reading month was actually April, when I had an average star rating of 4.58. So that was kind of interesting, I thought, to look at. Number of DNFs, I DNF'd 20 books. I am a pro DNFer. I think only DNFing 20, and obviously I don't include that 20 in the 157 that I finished, so I started 177, DNF 20 of those. I don't count books that I DNF towards finished books. That's just personally how I do it. I think that only DNFing 20 is showing that I've got really good now at knowing my reading taste and knowing what will work for me and what won't. And I'm going to do talk about this in my 2023 intentions video probably, but I'm going to do a revamp of my how I rate books video, because I've been on Booktube 4 years and I'm pretty sure I did it in my first 6 months and things have changed since then. But in terms of DNFing, I will usually read at least 50 pages of a book, but I can usually tell pretty quickly if it's not for me. So yeah, I had 20 books that I didn't finish. Then we'll talk about genre. This wasn't really something that I'm particularly interested in tracking, but I asked on my Instagram last night, which is always linked in the description if you want to follow me along there. I'm very active, particularly on stories. What you guys wanted to see for this video, and loads of people were like, oh, genre breakdown. And I was like, okay. And like I said, it's not something I paid that much attention to because I read most genres. I think the only genre I don't read is sci-fi, and even occasionally I will, even with that genre, occasionally pick one up. So yeah, it's not really something I paid that much attention to. But if you'd asked me which genres I read most, I would have said literary fiction, historical fiction, and thrillers. And then I had a look at my StoryGraph, which is also linked if you would like to be friends over there. And they told me that in at number 5, they give you like the top 5 genres for the year. In at number 5 was LGBTQIA+, which I was really happy with. And I read 22 books that would fit into that genre. Is it a genre? I'm not sure if it's a genre or if it's representation. I don't know, but that's what StoryGraph counted as. Then I read, in at number 4 was thriller. I read 26 books that would count as thrillers. Number 3 was fantasy, and I was like, what? Because I don't really read fantasy, but I read 27 books last year that are categorised as fantasy, and that really surprised me. And then the top 2 were not really that much of a surprise, because number 2 was mystery at 31, and then I read 41 historical books last year. Mostly, well, a big chunk of that is Alison Weir, because I read the whole, as you can see, one is missing for a spoiler for one of my favourite books of the year. I had read the whole of the 6 Tudor Queens series, plus the short story collection, and I read one of her non-fictions on Mary Boleyn. I have to shift. So yeah, there was a lot of historical fiction. 41 books from out of 157 last year were historical fiction. So that's my genre breakdown. And then in terms of star rating, I didn't give any books 1 star, because if it's going to be 1 star, I would have DNF'd it. I gave 2 books 2 stars. And again, I'll talk about how I rate things in that video that will be coming, I think, in February. 3 stars, I gave 29 books. 4 stars was my most rated, my average rating, 84 books, and I also had 42 5-star reads. So yeah, I had some really, really high ratings, here's Jack again, through that year. So that's the genres and the star ratings. Let's talk about favourite books. So the way that I do this is, at the end of each month, I choose my favourite book of the month, and then it makes it really super easy for me to create my favourite books of the year list. Sorry, there's now a truck outside my house, so sorry if you can hear that. So I have got most of them, not all of them, because some of them I have lent to other people, and when I say lent, I mean shoved into their hands and said, you have to read this. So let's go through together. So I'm not going to give like loads of thoughts or kind of breakdowns on them, or I'm just going to be fairly brief, because like I said, I will link my wrap up playlist in the description, so you can go and see for each month. You'll be able to go and see my actual kind of live reaction. Here's Savannah. Sav, if that doesn't sum up 2022, I don't know what does. So in January, my favourite read of January was Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. This is the 3rd in the Practical Magic series. It was my very first read of the year. I absolutely adored it, and it's still my favourite of the series. And this goes back in time to when the Owen's Curse began. And I did say I wasn't going to talk about too much about each book, because we've got 12 to talk about and we're already 8 minutes in. So yes, Magic Lessons with Alice Hoffman was my January favourite read. February, this was such a surprise. And I also said that I was going to go and read loads more of this author's work, and have I done it? No, I haven't. I've got one on my TBR. Still sat there, but my favourite read for February was Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. I loved everything about this, obviously because it was my favourite read of the month, but it's historical, it's sapphic, I loved it, so atmospheric. I really need to read more Sarah Waters. Like I said, I do have one upstairs on my TBR that I need to get to soon. It's chunky. We adored it. We adored it. Okay, so March was The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. And I see so many mixed reviews for this. I feel like this series, because this is the second of the series, this series is either like for you or it isn't. There's not many people that land in the middle. I've got the 3rd one upstairs to read, which I'll be reading in February. This, I just find this series really fun and cozy, and then unexpectedly dark in places, and I think that's what I really liked. It's not twee, because occasionally something happens, you're like, oh, okay, that's a bit dark. And I just really like his writing style. So yes, that was my March pick. Then in April was The Haunted Queen, which is the by Alison Weir, which is the Jane Seymour book from the 6 Tudor Queen series. This one was my favourite, mostly because it really surprised me, because going into it I expected it to be my least favourite of the series, and actually I loved what she did with Jane's story and what she added and the way it was done. So yeah, that was April. Then in May it was The Madwoman's Ball by Victoria Mass. Very short one. I've got a couple of short books in here. Gorgeous cover, set in France in 1885 in an asylum. And I thought it was dark and tense and really cleverly done, especially for such a short book. Then so that was May. Then in June, this is the first one that I don't have because I've lent it to someone, which was On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. It's one of the books that my brother bought me, I feel like for Christmas last year, or possibly for my birthday the year before, and it just blew me away. It's a conversation between a mother and a son, or a son is writing a letter to his mother, and it was just really unexpected and really beautifully done, and obviously I would highly recommend all of these. Then for August, oh no, July, we've missed out July. I'm really good at this, professional booktuber, really not. Oh, are we having somebody might be having a wrestle in the hallway, sorry. Then in July, I really loved American Housewife by Helen Ellis, and I think this was recommended by Amy Myers. I think that was her. And this is short stories, and they are hilarious, dark, twisty, and it's just about being a woman primarily in America. And yeah, it says on the front, demented, dangerous and genuinely refreshing, and I would completely agree. This copy is also dented because my cats keep parkouring up my bookshelves and knocking things over. But anyway, yes, this was my July favourite read. Now Savannah's doing zoomies, that's really helpful, thank you, we love that. Then in August I picked up a book that so many people had been screaming at me to read, telling me I was going to love it, and they were right. And that book was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. This is my beautiful signed first edition from Toppings. I mean, look at those end pages that I got when I was, look, it's got the stamp in it and everything, Elizabeth Zott approved, that I got when I was with Leanne and Harry in Edinburgh. And yes, I loved this. This again is historical fiction. It's about a woman who is a scientist in the 50s and 60s. She's not taken seriously because she's a woman, and she's given this cooking show, and it's about what happens from there. Just content warnings for this. This has got some very, very dark themes. There is a very graphic sexual assault and rape quite early on in the book, and it's one of those things that I feel like isn't talked about. It's kind of sold as this like cute, quirky, feminist story, which it is, but there are also some really dark things in this, so just be aware of that if you are going to pick it up. But I absolutely adored this. I flew through it. I can't wait to read it again. Then in September, another book that I picked up whilst I was in Edinburgh and absolutely loved and adored is A Curious History of Sex by Kate Lister. This is non-fiction. It's exactly what you think it is from the title and the cover, and I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. I actually ended up reading it on audiobook. I read the first part, as you can see from the spine. I read the first part physically and then picked it up on audiobook. And I would really recommend both. I feel like I'm going to have to be careful as I flick through this because I don't want to get demonetised. But you need the physical copy for the pictures. Let's put it that way. But the audiobook is read really, really cleverly. So I'd also highly recommend that one. Then in September, no, we did September. Then in October, I read a book. I picked up a book that had got a lot of hype on Twitter, and I actually requested the ARC from the publisher, and Bookbreak very kindly sent it to me. It was not at all my kind of book, but I'd seen it on Twitter and I'd seen that lots of people were excited about it, and then when Bookbreak offered it, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll pick that up and give it a little read. You know, it'll be, you know, a quick read, it's quite short. And then I found myself absolutely gripped, and I absolutely adored it. And like I said, it is not my usual genre, because that book is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. And this is high fantasy. It's high fantasy, low stakes, I think is how it's described. Yeah, high fantasy, low stakes, good company. I loved this. If I had to pick one book that's my favourite read of the year, it would be this one. And I've seen mixed reviews, and again, a bit like the Thursday Murder Club series, I feel like it's either for you or it isn't. This was definitely for me. I picked it up at a perfect time. I read it, I think, in one day. And it was just one of those books that just hit my brain perfectly at the perfect moment. And we're following, is it Viv, I think her name is? I'm so bad at character names. Yes, Viv, who is a barbarian. Is she a barbarian orc or something? But basically she's decided that she's had enough of fighting for a living and being a monster, and she decides to open a coffee shop. And so she moves to this town, and it's about her physically building the coffee shop and putting the business together and getting the beans and the machine and all that kind of stuff. But nobody knows what coffee is in this place. And then gradually this found family forms, and it has got so many of my buzzwords in it. Found family, food, it's cozy, it's sapphic. I loved it so much. I'm so excited to reread this at some point this year, and I'm trying to like save it. My brain really needs something good and like calming and peaceful, because I just adore this entire thing. I'm also obsessed with this cover. I know a lot of people prefer the original cover, but I love this cover. And I also really like that the original cover, because originally it was indie published, and then Shauna Maguire read it and made so much noise about it that the traditional publishers kind of picked it up and have traditionally published it. But you've got the original cover art on the inside, which I really like, and I just adored this whole thing. So yeah, I don't usually give like my top read of the year because I usually can't choose, but this would definitely be up there. It was such a surprise. I love a surprising book, and it completely swept me off my feet. Okay, then in November, very different change in tone because my favourite read of November was Mary Prince, The History of Mary Prince. Mary Prince was one of the first female black slaves to have her story told and published. And this is her story. It is told through a filter because she, like many people, particularly black people at that time, enslaved people, she couldn't read or write herself. She couldn't write herself. So it is told through a filter, which is who was it that helped her? I feel like it was the Anti-Slavery Society or something. Again, this is another one from my brother. He did very well at picking books for me last year. Look. So it is told through a filter, but it is also in her words. And I've read about her in other books, but this was the first time I actually read her story, and it was incredibly powerful. It's really short. I think the audiobook is less than 2 hours. So if you have been thinking about it or are even vaguely interested, please pick it up, because it was tough reading in places, but it is definitely worth reading. And like I said, it is her story, so I feel like it's important to hear these stories from the people directly themselves as close as possible. So yes, that was my favourite read of November. And then December is a book I don't have because I have foisted it on, I think my parents-in-law have got it at the moment, and that is A Girlhood. And oh, that book, I need to get a finished copy. Again, I was very lucky to be sent an ARC by Book Break, and it tells the story of the author's daughter, who is a trans girl, and it tells the story of them as a family, I don't want to say like dealing with it because it makes it sound like a negative thing. She's so positive and loving about her daughter and her other children, but it starts with a knock at the door that came one day, and their daughter had been living as a girl for some time with the full support of her parents and family, but a neighbour had reported them to Child Protective Services and said that they were forcing this little girl to be gay or queer, I think is the word they used. And it goes from there, and it looks at what this woman had to do to protect her child. They actually ended up moving from a red state to a blue state. This is in America, so that her daughter could live her life as she should. And it's very much a love letter to her daughter. The whole thing is written as a letter. It's written anonymously. The kind of pen name used isn't the author's real name, because obviously she wants to protect the privacy both of her daughter and the rest of her family, which absolutely makes sense. The writing style felt really familiar, and you're told at the beginning that it's a pseudonym for a New York Times best-selling author, and I feel like it's someone I read because it felt really familiar, the writing style. But obviously I completely respect their privacy and they should absolutely have that. But yeah, it was really powerful and I would highly recommend it to everybody. Basically, I feel like it's one of those books that everybody should read. Okay, so those are my favourite books of the year, and I think, like I said, if I had to pick 3, I'm just looking at the stack, I would pick Legends and Lattes for sure, Lessons in Chemistry, and probably, yeah, A Girlhood, which I don't have right here right now, which is super annoying because I want to get a hardback copy. Can you see? Yeah, you can see the books that I love I buy in hardback. So I think they're my top 3. But what I really like about this stack is we've got, let's pick these up, we've got a real mix of stuff. I feel like this gives you quite a good cross-section of my reading tastes, because we've got randomly a fantasy, we've got literary fiction, non-fiction, literary fiction, I'm not sure how I describe that one. It's almost horror, historical fiction, cozy mystery, lesbian literary fiction, and literary fiction about magic. So yeah, I feel like that gives you quite a good cross section, and obviously there are a couple of others that aren't in that stack. But yeah, I'm pleased with that stack of favourites for the year. Last things I just want to talk about briefly is Booktube. So my sub count, I track this privately for myself each month just so I can see how my channel's doing. I don't focus on numbers particularly. It's lovely to have new subscribers, so please, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed and you want more of this kind of nonsense, then hit subscribe, because I always get excited when I see the number growing, but I try not to focus on it because that's not the point for me. The point for me is to have fun, chat books, engage with other people, and just have a nice time. But it is interesting to see what growth I've had over the last 12 months. So in January we started on 2,307, sorry, my brain hiccup then, and we finished on 2,899 in December. So my channel grew by 592 people, which is wonderful. I feel like it's such a weird thing to talk about, because for some people their channel will grow by that much in like 2 weeks, and other people will have smaller growth than that or slower growth than that. And I feel like my channel, I've been here 4 years now, I feel like it's been like slow but steady, and I really like the corner of the internet that we've kind of created here together. But yeah, it was just one of those stats, so I was like, that's interesting to track. And then the final thing is we raised £300.79 last year for Mind. So if you're not aware, my AdSense goes to charity. I also donate £1 per book, and we did a little fundraiser over my birthday week. And I've managed to, on 31st of December, I managed to donate £300 and a bit, £301 to Mind, and with gift aid, because I'm a UK taxpayer, that was actually bumped up to £375. So thank you so much for watching my content, because most of that money comes from you guys watching and the AdSense, and also donations that were made for my birthday. So thank you so much for doing that. I was so happy to be able to do that at the end of last year, and I will talk in my 2023 intentions video about what we're going to do for this year. So yeah, I think those are all the stats. That's everything you guys asked for. We've talked about genres, talked about number of books read, we've talked about star ratings, my favourite reads. I think that's probably it. If you got to this point in the video, tell me what was your favourite read of last year, and if you can't pick one, give me your top 3. If you don't feel like leaving me a comment, you can just leave an emoji, and let's have either the coffee cup emoji, or like the sword emoji, because I feel like that's appropriate for one of my top reads of last year. Please subscribe if you would like more of this chaos, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks everyone. Bye.